So my background is I'm born in Pretoria and I hail from Pretoria, but I spent the least part of my life in Pretoria. That reason being I had to go away to a boarding school for the blind in Pietermaritzburg. The main reason for that was that there were schools for the blind in Pretoria, but because of the apartheid system I was not allowed to attend the school. So I had to attend the only school for the blind for Indians all the way in Pietermaritzburg. So I went right up to matric at the Arthur Blacksall School for the Blind in Pietermaritzburg, and then went to Wits University and went on to get my degree in economic science, majoring in actuarial science and statistics. I then started working. My first job was at Momentum, and then I went on to the FSB and Liberty Life, and finally I'm currently at Old Mutual. I'm married and I have 3 children, and I've been studying for a very long time to qualify as an actuary.
Yep. Absolutely. So a very long journey. Obviously a few challenges along the way, adapting to mainstream culture and whatnot.
I think I was lucky in the sense that at the school for the blind everything was adapted. Everything was in Braille. It was a school for the blind, so our teachers knew Braille. But when I got to university, there was quite a culture shock. It was moving from one extreme to the other. So where in school everything was adapted for the blind, at university there was absolutely nothing. We had a unit called the Disability Unit that supported us academically. And given the field that I was in, actuarial science, where no blind person has ventured this way before in South Africa, there was nothing available in Braille or recorded on tape or anything like that. So any material that I had to study had to first be transcribed, in some cases from handwritten notes onto computer so that I could read it. That was the one challenge. The other challenge was that because there's no conventional Braille notation for this field, we've had to develop our own notation so that I could communicate with the sighted world. A lot of the notation is based on standard programming code, but in actuarial science there's a lot of mathematical and statistical notation that can become quite complicated. Now the device I use is called a Braille display, which only shows text in a straight line, and you can imagine something like a fraction that's written over 2 lines can be quite a challenge. So complicated expressions could take up to 6 lines, for example, written in my notation. In the work environment, there's the constant need to prove my capability, because actuarial science is a difficult field, and a blind person doing actuarial science makes it even more difficult almost to trust. So I'm constantly having to prove my worth. I think computers have made a big difference. They've definitely improved accessibility, because I can read text on a computer, and that's what I use to function as a blind person in the work environment with my studies. There's still that constant barrier though between sighted people and blind people, and one has to adapt to it.
So what's some of the latest technology that's come out that's assisted you with sort of basic stuff, reading emails, communicating overseas clients, whatnot?
So I use a standard laptop that anybody else would use, together with assistive equipment. The main piece of equipment is called a Braille display, which literally converts text from the screen into a tactile format. So it's a system of raised dots, which is called Braille, which I then use using my 2 fingers to read and write. The writing part is the standard keyboard that I use, and I know touch typing, which I can then read what I've typed on the braille display. In terms of diagrams, there is technology available to raise a visual diagram into a tactile format, but it's not that accessible. It costs quite a bit to raise a diagram. But that's how I survived at school with subjects like maths and science, physiology. At university as well, most of the diagrams were converted into a tactile format using this technology. Latest technology as well, I can add to that. On my phone, for example, I use an iPhone. There's screen reading technology that's built into the operating system, and most smartphones come with that kind of technology. It makes it quite useful because I can catch an Uber cab, for example, to get to where I want to. Other technology, I would say, is still lacking in terms of accessibility to material. For example, I am cut out from a lot of stuff that's happening in the media, even though I can read up on it. But anything that's advertising or published upfront that a sighted person can get just off the cuff, I need to literally go and look for it.
So you have to. Do you find yourself having to work twice as hard as your colleagues to stay ahead of the game?
Yes, I generally have to work, put in extra time and effort if I want to keep abreast of what's going on. In terms of work, I need to obviously do a lot of prior preparation.
Absolutely. And you've obviously, have you seen yourself paving a way for youngsters who dream of getting into the business world but didn't really know how to go about doing it with a similar disability?
I'd agree with that 100%. When I started out with the field of actuarial science, one of the intentions was to open up doors for other blind people. At the time, it was sort of taken for granted that a blind person either becomes a singer, a switchboard operator, or a lawyer. And I said, it's time we change that, So I think it's taken a long time, but the door is definitely open, and I can give advice to anybody else that wants to enter into any field that's mathematically based or that has common challenges.
And what specifically, what advice would you give to a youngster wanting to follow in your footsteps?
I would say first make sure that you're passionate about what you want to study, because it's one thing to work hard, but it takes a lot of grit, if I can use that word, to stick to it. If you're passionate about something, you're naturally going to succeed, and you'll be more willing to put in the time and effort. But with any field there are challenges, and if you're willing to overcome them, then you're going to get to where you want to.
Absolutely, and you probably had your fair share of naysayers over the years. How have you managed to keep your eye on the prize?
Oh well, I've had, when I started out with this career at university, I had a professor that said to me, actuarial science is a very difficult field for sighted people. You are blind, you shouldn't even consider trying it. And I decided that the word difficult is relative, and I should first test it to see how difficult, what does he mean by difficult. So when I passed my first year, he said, yes, you should continue. You've proved your point. And having studied this for such a long time, it's taken me 18 years to qualify. One naturally, just a human tendency is to want to throw in the towel. Last year I reached a point where I realized that the impact of my studies was quite heavy on my family, and things were getting a bit heavy, so I decided if I didn't pass that exam, which was the second last of the 15 exams, I was going to quit. Fortunately I passed the exam, and I was left with one to finish, which I then finished this year. There are a lot of challenges, when you're studying and your little girl comes and knocks on your study door and says, Dad, can you come and play with me? You almost think, what do I do now? Do I study or do I chase this girl away? those are sort of subtle ways of saying should you continue or not. But the determination was there, you know. And often when you've put in enough work already, that alone can spur you on to say, I've come so far, I can't quit now.
Absolutely. That's always a tough one, being able to manage family and work commitments, finding that balance.
I think when I started out in my first year, somebody came along and said, don't get married until you qualify. I took the advice initially, but it was taking too long, you know. So I said if I was going to wait to qualify before I get married, I may never end up getting married, and I definitely wanted to be married and have a family, you know. So I took the decision to get married and have kids, and yes, it came with its challenges. As I say, I was about to quit at some point.
And why does it take so long why is it such a long degree?
You mean
Actuary?
Long as in why did I choose?
No, just in general, why do they make actuaries study their life away?
I think it's the nature of the work, you know. There's a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of an actuary. It's almost like you have the final word. But there's a lot of judgment, and if you think of what we do, we use mathematical and statistics to almost make financial sense of the future. So it's not entirely crystal ball gazing like people would like to believe, but one needs to use the past and be able to almost predict what's going to happen in the future. And then as life goes on, you need to adjust those assumptions. So I think the intensive study is to groom you so that you're able to make the right judgments, because there's a lot dependent on it. You know, if you really think of it, in the life industry, it's people's life savings, or for companies, the financial soundness of the company depends entirely on the decisions made by the actuaries.
Absolutely. And as with your poor eyesight, presumably your other senses must be extremely heightened.
I think purely out of usage. So many people think that we have a very good sense of touch, which we do, but it's not to say that it's because we're blind, it's purely because we use it more. So anybody else has the same capability if they had to start using it as well. Same with hearing. 80% of stimulus to the brain goes through the eye, and if you don't have that, then naturally the other senses have to compensate. So hearing and touch, smell, definitely. But there's one sense that I think I've had to develop a lot more, and that's common sense. Very often one has to deduce from a situation by just observing that, if Greg is sitting in front of me, I'm not going to face this way and speak, for example. So yeah, there's a bit of common sense that helps a lot with adapting as well.
Do you find people sometimes try and take advantage of you?
Yes, people get a thrill out of testing blind people, which is fine. I've grown to be used to it. When it's a child, I can excuse that because I know the child is purely trying to learn and experiment and adventurous, and out of that they get a valuable lesson. But with adults, you would think that they would have a bit more sensitivity. I've been lucky in the sense that I have a trusting nature, and I haven't really been badly let down so far.
That's good to know. And it sounds like you've always had a passion for maths and science. Was that the main driver to put you into actuary?
I think my passion goes slightly beyond that. It's more logical thinking. So for example, computer programming appeals immensely to me. And obviously what comes with that, and if you say logical thinking, then it naturally leads to maths and science. And yeah, I think that then the career that offered that most was actuarial science, so hence going for that,
And then applying to university, what was that process like, coming from a very sheltered environment in the school?
It was very daunting because for the first time I had to now literally interact with the sighted world in a very real way. We had to apply and obviously then combined with that see what support structures are in place, especially with a career that hasn't been ventured before. So yeah, I think that, and then once I got to university, the adapting to the physical environment, learning my way around, was quite a challenge because it was a vast open space as opposed to our very sheltered school, like you call it,
Absolutely. And now you're a life coach. Which is the biggest lesson you're trying to impart on your clients?
I think if there's two words I can use, it's to live consciously. Be aware of the impact you have on you, on everyone around you and your environment, and be aware of what impact everyone else has on you. I think that is sort of the root of all solutions that people are looking for. So whether it's getting rich, or whether it's succeeding academically, or succeeding spiritually, I think if you live consciously, then all is sorted,
Are you seeing a rise in consciousness in South Africa, or we obviously still got a long way to go?
I think it's actually the opposite way around. We actually being led by the nose in South Africa. I've got to be careful of what I say here, but commercially, politically, I think a lot of people are mere followers. And even if we do have people that realize what's happening, no one's willing to take up the challenge to say, let's oppose this that's happening. It's definitely not right.
Do you think our schooling system feeds into that sort of sheep mentality?
I think so, because I think the majority of schools in South Africa are geared towards getting your 6 or 8 A's in matric. There's very few schools that teach people a holistic way of life, developing as an individual, not just the academic side. I think that was one of the things that I was strong in, or that helped me a lot to get to where I wanted to be, is that I drew my strength from within, which I find is lacking these days. Being at a boarding school and away from parents, in the time there was no easy access with cell phones, etc. So one had to rely on oneself to be determined and to continue. And I find that is so much lacking these days.
And as a small boy in a strange environment at the school, away from home, it must have been very tough times, crying yourself to sleep at times, I'm sure.
It was tough. I cried every time I left home, even up to the age of 17, because I would go away from home and only come back on school holidays. So it was a long 3 months. And while you were there, you would see people that lived closer by go home on weekends, and you'd wish you could be one of them, on sports days and awards functions, other people's parents would come by and watch, and because our parents were far away, they couldn't. There were long weekends when we were 5 or 6 left in the big hostel with one house mother, because everybody else had gone home. It was tough, but I think it had its benefits in the sense that I learned to appreciate what I have.
So do you think whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger?
I think so, definitely. Yeah.
And you still have those bonds from those days?
Sorry, I still have.
You still friends with some of the guys from those early days?
Yes, yeah. I have a few friends that I keep in contact with. Being in Cape Town, I'm obviously far away from them. But yes, there are definitely a few friends that I'm in touch with.
And spirituality is another big, another cornerstone of your life. After reading your profile, how do you come to terms with the cards you've been dealt in life and still love God, so to speak, or whatever you want to say?
I think every person is here to fulfill a bigger goal, apart from the ones that we can actually see. It is almost like undergoing what you need to in order to grow spiritually. So our physical life here on earth is actually a training ground so that our soul can progress further. This is just my personal belief system, you know. So with me being blind, I think it's almost like a blessing in disguise, because on the one hand I don't see all the temptations that sighted people would normally see, but on the other hand there are a lot of limitations, and with limitations comes tolerance and acceptance, and all of those then help me to grow spiritually.
Sure, that's deep, man. You talk about taking on the system. Do you ever think as yourself as being one of those guys to go to try and enter the political realm and shake things up a bit?
I would love to. I think I have the right tools now. It's sad that people wouldn't listen to you if you don't have a title. One of my plans is to use this title then to get the credibility or use the credibility that I now have to bring about change. I find people wouldn't listen if you don't have the credibility. So you need a title almost to shine and make a difference. Otherwise people don't listen. Which is quite sad, because a lot of people have a lot of value to add, but because it's the man on the street, because it's someone that doesn't have much to show, people wouldn't listen. Yet they may have the wisest advice.
We're following the wrong role models.
For sure.
Transformation in South Africa is another key talking point. Really isn't happening at the right places at the right speed. How are we going to get to the bottom of that problem?
I may sound a bit, I don't know what's the right word, but maybe not practical. But I think the answers to our problems in South Africa lie in the field of spirituality. One can go and build many houses, and one can go and bring water to people. But if there's no change in the hearts of people, then the problems will continue. Everything else will just be temporary. We need people that are willing, and willingness comes from the heart. People that are willing to put their own luxuries aside and change the lives of others. I think the answer is definitely spiritual. If we can change, transformation needs to start from within. And then the rest will just follow through naturally.
There's definitely a lot of healing that needs to be done in this country.
I think if we fix up the hearts of people, it will take a long time. But sometimes I almost start believing that maybe that is just the way it was planned for this country. That we needed hardship, but from that hardship we can rise. I mean, we've never had a civil war in this country, so it means there is a lot of potential. People are forgiving, you know. Nelson Mandela has taught us about the art of forgiveness. But what's happening now is quite different from I think what the big plan was.
Exactly, the guys who dropped the ball somewhere along the line.
Yes, I think so. I think and a lot of people have been misled. Yet, you know, we still follow. This is the whole point I was making about following without thinking.
So on a spiritual level, I guess that's the fight between good and evil on some level, that what's happening in this country. Not necessarily a fight, but just a natural...
Yeah, I think it's what we call samskarik, as in whatever you're meant to undergo, you have to go through it. You know, the one that's suffering and the one that's benefiting from the situation, this was meant to be. It's been written out spiritually already. The difference is what you make of that. Do you go back worse than when you entered, or can you rise above your situation?
So it's actually not looking at a struggle as a bad thing, but actually as an opportunity to grow.
That's it, yes.
That's powerful. And then people would feel less sorry for themselves and get on with it if they had that attitude.
I think that the only guarantee you have in life is yourself, because everything outside yourself can change. And if you work with yourself, you will rise above a situation, because one has a choice in times of adversity. Do I succumb to this, or do I rise above it? Looking at it after the situation, it's obviously easier. But when you're in the situation of adversity, it takes a lot to say, I'm not going to succumb to this, I'm going to actually rise above it.
Sean, you've had your fair share of adversity over the years.
I think so. I think I've been blessed in the sense that I've been able to draw on that inner strength. Having said that, I have had a lot of support from a lot of people as well, and that's where my luck and my wealth lies, is that I haven't been left completely alone. I've had a lot of support from my family, my wife, and a lady that I really wish to mention, Reiki Voigt, that supported me academically. She did all the transcribing and the description of diagrams when I was at university. I think that was key to my success now.
Absolutely, and the power to change the world, that's a big thing. That's another one of your big things. So how do young people get over that fear of bucking the system to do the right thing?
I think often when people want to succeed or want to do something big, the first mistake they look at is to look at the success of other people. I don't say we shouldn't look at the success of other people, but that shouldn't be the only thing you look at. What you should look at is actually how many times those people have failed before they succeeded, and what they used to overcome those obstacles. Because when one looks at a big task like changing the world, one gets put off. It's too overwhelming. You almost think it's impossible. So rather look at the small steps first. I'd say the first step is to make the change from within. Change the attitude, strengthen the willpower.
Amen to that. And qualifying, what does that mean to you on a personal level?
It means that I don't have to study anymore, which is a big relief. It frees up a lot of time. I can tell you my family is very happy about that, because studying I become a different person, It's almost that laser sharp focus and everything else doesn't matter. So I definitely got my family back. It means I have more time to follow my ambitions, and my ambitions is to make a difference in people's life in whatever way. The biggest thing I want to start with is the whole living consciously message.
And you work in a very cutthroat business. How do you balance that with your very humanitarian sort of outlook on that?
I think as long as one keeps to one's own principles, one can project those forward in one's work and make a difference to those around you. I'm actually fortunate in that the company I work for is very ethical, and it's not just a window dressing exercise. One can see from the way we conduct business that things are exactly what we say. So this is why I've been happy to be here, because it aligns with my personal value systems.
Living in Cape Town compared to Joburg?
Very much more relaxed. When I started it, that relaxation was a bit of a frustration because it felt much slower. The people here definitely have a lot more time for humanly things rather than the material world.
And finally, what sort of impact have you had on your colleagues as a team leader?
I think my colleagues have grown used to me, and almost for a while didn't realize that what I'm doing is quite big. But with me qualifying, I think that's made a difference, and I suppose it'll open up a lot more doors at work.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing that.
Great.